Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least
There is
of
breaking news now from the war in Syria, and this could be significant. Reports that chemical weapons have been used in that conflict.
break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these,
The Assad regime
then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these,
we can tell you beyond reasonable doubt
who will be
that our evidence
like
proves the Assad
Jesus
regime
to the least of
prepared for this
these?
attack.
If not us,
I've watched
tell
debates
me
in
who
Congress.
will be
Congressman asked Mr. Kerry, is there okay if people say they've gotten stronger? He says, no. I say, officially, they aren't dead. The main combat of the so-called Al-Nusra is a unit of Al-Qaeda. They know about it. It's not pleasant for you to see this. Well, we communicate with them and assume that they are decent people. He lies openly, and he knows that he lies.
We're not really positive who set off the gas. I mean, the group that's most likely to benefit from that is Al-Qaeda.
Did President Bashir Assad gas his own people? Not according to a growing number of skeptics, including Alex Jones, syndicated radio talk show host.
I don't know who launched the chemical attack, but all the evidence leans towards the rebels having the motive to do it. And the Russians have put out a new report saying they have proof the rebels did it back in March of this year.
Some people here and there, amazingly, have questioned the evidence of this assault on conscience. I repeat here again today that only the most willful desire to avoid reality can assert that this did not occur as described, or that the regime did not do it.
All right, so what kind of proof is there that the rebels would do this? I mean, the rebels supposedly are supporting the people of Syria. They would actually sacrifice their own people in order to draw America into this war to start World War III?
Well, look, the rebels are made up of jihadis, Al-Qaeda, and some domestic Syrians, but around 60%, many studies show, are Al-Qaeda, are jihadis. They've been wiping out whole Christian villages, so I don't think the rebels represent the Syrian people.
I believe the rebels one hundred fact those pills that animates and aids to their organs and all that is filled in the shop do want to support these people, do want to supply arms to these people.
There's a growing volume of new evidence from numerous sources in the Middle East, mostly affiliated with the Syrian opposition and its sponsors or supporters, which makes a very strong case based on solid circumstantial evidence that the August 21st, 2013 Pentagon strike
understand or comprehend the departure of God, no matter how bad
When we love the least of days, then we will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of days, when we love the least of days. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Good morning and welcome to the King's Report this Monday, April 10th, 2017, 8th year of Chungi, 3rd month, 14th day by the heavenly calendar. I'm your host, Hyungjae Sean Moon, the second king of Cheongguk, broadcasting live from the Cheongguk Palace today. And let's go first to our AccuWeather forecast with Tim, the Agent Elder. Tim.
Good morning. We may want to spend some time dusting off our summer wardrobes this morning. It's clear and 44 degrees outside. This being the 14th day of the heavenly calendar. The moon is almost full, so it's a bright moon out there. Today we're going up to 79 degrees. Yes, down to 51 today, and then back up to 81 tomorrow. We're going to hit 80 degrees for the first time this year. And AccuWeather, an article in AccuWeather was warning that the tick problem may be higher than usual. Lyme disease, risk will be higher than usual this year. They say that there were a lot of chestnuts last year, and when you have a lot of chestnuts, you have a lot of mice, they say, and ticks, as not just deer, but also latch on to mice. And so AccuWeather is, this article is warning us to be careful with ticks this year, especially, even more than usual.
Oh, goodness. Well, that's very terrible in all respects.
Wednesday, it's going to get back down to a little closer to normal, so it's not going to last. But today and tomorrow, it's going to be very warm. And ticks throughout the spring and summer, we have to be careful.
80 degrees plus a load of ticks. My goodness. I remember when we first got here, we took a walk in the park right around tick season in June, I believe. And we took our dog out there, and she put her face in just the grass. She was just sniffing around. We just wanted her to go pee in the grass at the park. And she went in and just put her face in the grass. She had 6 ticks on her face. So during the start of the tick season, which is usually in June, they are just reproducing like crazy. And of course, Lyme disease is a issue. We were talking yesterday with Kukjinim, and he was, of course, sharing how effective Andrographis was. He had Lyme's, Andrographis, Japanese knotweed, and cat's claw, but particularly Andrographis for battling Lyme disease naturally. So definitely look into that. Andrographis is not only anti-inflammation, it's also antiviral and antibacterial as well. So a very powerful herb from an Indian root, Indian tree. Let's now go to our Rima this morning, and we are today in Mark 5 and 21. And the subheading is, A Girl Restored to Life and a Woman Healed. 21. Now when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by the sea. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, My little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her that she may be healed, and she will live. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years, and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself the power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, Who touched my clothes? But his disciples said to him, Do you see the multitude thronging you? And you say, Who touched me? And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. While he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, Do not be afraid, only believe. And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult, and those who wept and wailed loudly. When he came in, he said to them, Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping. They ridiculed him. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and mother of the child and those who were with him, and entered where the child was laying. Then he took the child by hand and said to her, Talitha kumi, which is translated, Little girl, I say to you, arise. Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age. And they were overcome with great amazement. But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and said that something should be given her to eat. Amen. We are here in this particular Bible, the Patriot's Bible, and there's a section related to this entitled Worship. Who can this be that even the winds and sea obey him? Mark 4:41. Who but the ruler of the winds? As the president of Yale College, 1778-1795, Ezra Stiles gave a major election address entitled The United States Elevated to Glory and Honor before the Governor and the General Assembly of Connecticut in May 1783, stating, In our lowest and most dangerous state in 1776 and 1777, we sustained ourselves against a British army of 60,000 troops, commanded by the ablest generals Britain could procure throughout Europe, with a naval force of 22,000 seamen and above 80 men of war. Who but a Washington, inspired by heaven, could have conceived the surprise move upon the enemy at Princeton, that Christmas Eve when Washington and his army crossed the Delaware? Who but the ruler of the winds could have delayed the British reinforcements by 3 months of contrary ocean winds at a critical point of the war? Or what but a providential miracle at the last minute detected a treacherous scheme of traitor Benedict Arnold, which would have delivered the American army, including George Washington himself, into the hands of the enemy? On the French role in the Revolution, it is God who so ordered the balancing interests of nations as to produce an irresistible motive in the European maritime powers to take our part. The United States are under particular obligations to become a holy people unto the Lord our God. There's also a section on World War II here. Quite an interesting section there. But again, we can see even the president of Yale College, what a shame Yale College has become, becoming such a globalist, centralist, communist propaganda machine tank, along with Harvard and Princeton, etc. And of course, Yale is the famous Skull and Bones are at Yale's, aren't they? There they are, the satanic club where they make you do homosexual rituals to blackmail you for the rest of your political and public career. But even Ezra Stiles, the president of Yale College, understood the spiritual nature and providential nature of America, because during the wartime there were so many things that could not be explained and that could not be foreseen by just normal conventional warfare prediction. We have the move of God. He mentions, for example, the ruler of the winds could have who but God could have delayed the British reinforcements by 3 months of contrary winds, ocean winds, at a critical point in the war. He mentions also that there were 22,000 seamen, and also 8 British army of 60, I'm sorry, I said 60,000 troops in which the Americans had to sustain themselves and had to battle against. That's a massive army, folks, at that time. That is absolutely massive. Can you imagine 60,000 redcoats pouring in, even to your town? That's a lot of people. I mean, the entire NYPD plus federal bureaucracy, law enforcement bureaucracies in New York City is like 50,000. So that is quite a force. Can you imagine the entire NYPD plus FBI plus New York based law enforcement, federal law enforcement, coming at you? That would be quite a scene, wouldn't it, Tim? But these founding fathers could see, and these early pioneers could see the move of God. To them, God was not some detached ideological idea. God was present in their battle against tyranny, present in their battle for freedom, present in the British 6,000 plus troops and 20,000 plus naval warriors who were coming to enforce the King of Britain's law to oppress and exploit the American colonies. This is a reality of the founding fathers and the original pilgrims who came to this nation. They understood the providential nature. They moved with divine providence and destiny. They didn't just come here as pilgrims and pioneers. They were moving with the hand of God. They were moving with the powerful force of their futures before their hands. In the same way, the bold women who came to Jesus, the bold men and women who came to Jesus, in this particular scripture, Jairus was so desperate because his daughter, whom he loved, 12 years old, was dying. And all the experts and the doctors said she was dead. And of course, the woman with the fountain of blood, the issue of the fountain of blood in her body. For 12 years, seeping pores and bleeding. Desperate to, the Bible says here that she had seen all the physicians and spent all that she had, and yet to no effect. In fact, it was getting worse. But she was desperate. In her desperation, she walked and ran towards Christ to touch the hem of his garment. And it is in that desperation that we truly rely on God, folks. Being in a situation where we become completely desperate is not always a bad thing. Not always a bad thing. Because in that desperation, we find our weakness, our inability to ourselves overcome a particular issue. And we realize that we need to connect with a higher power. That we need more strength than we can deserve. And in that desperation, we long and yearn for God. And it may be a transformative episode in which we forever realize that God is with us. Do not run from desperate situations. I remember when we lost it all and walked away from all the foundation that Father had given me. We lost everything. It was a very desperate time, but with God and seeking and pursuing God, the Bible says you may gain the whole world but lose your soul. what does it profit you to do such things? Conversely, you may lose the world, but keep your soul. Then you are truly wealthy. And even though we were in that situation of complete loss, and everybody was mocking us and all the leaders were laughing, saying they'll fail and come groveling back on their hands and knees and bow to the heresy of the Han Mother. The hand of God, truth, righteousness, the Spirit of God, and the power of the horizon of destiny before us. Insisted, asserted itself, commanded that the spirit of desperation and weakness and darkness would pass the hand of God, and the move of the Spirit would bring forth new life, growth, and the establishment of Father's wish. His kingdom to be lifted up, his kingship to stand strong, and for his name to be glorified. We'll be right back after this short break.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report. This Monday, April 10th, 2017. I'm your host, Seong Sean Moon, the second King of Cheongguk. And now let's go to Mrs. Kang for our Holy Spirit moment in the morning. Tim.
Mrs. Cotton's Rima this morning is in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 23, verses 33 through 35, and I will read that before she begins. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him, and the malefactors, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. And the people stood beholding. And the rulers also with them derided him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be Christ, the chosen of God. 말씀하십시오.
안녕하십니까.
Good morning, everyone.
오늘 여러분들에게 말씀드릴 내용은 예수님 앞에 나타난 우편 강도와 좌편 강도에 대한 내용으로 말씀드리겠습니다.
Today I would like to speak to you about the two thieves, one on the right and one on the left, that appear in the Bible together with Jesus.
예수님께서는 십자가에 달려 돌아가셨지만은 그는 진리의 본체자로 오신 것입니다.
Jesus died on the cross, but he came as the person, as the one who is the original substance of truth.
예수님은 즉 참 진리의 씨로 나타났습니다.
He came as the seed of the truth.
그런데 이 씨는 십자가에 돌아가심으로 말미암아 십자가로 심어졌던 것입니다.
This seed, however, as a result of his death, was planted into that cross.
저는 아버님께서 설교집, 말씀선집 1권에서 10권까지에는 정말로 예수님에 대한 내용이 많이 쓰여져 있습니다.
If you look at the first 10 volumes of Father's selected sermons, you see that he speaks a great deal about Jesus.
예수님의 입장, 예수님의 사정, 예수님의 실천, 이 내용이 많이 쓰여져 있는데 아버님께서는 말씀하실 때마다 통곡을 하시면서 말씀하셨습니다.
The sermons in those first 10 volumes talk about Jesus' position, his circumstances, the actions that he took. But every time Father gave those sermons, he wept a great deal.
어떤 날은 아버님이 말씀하시는데 정말로 소리를 내어 우시면서 예수님의 사정이, 예수님의 심정이, 예수님의 입장을 아는 기독교인들이 얼마나 되느냐 하면서 통곡하셨습니다.
Some days when he would speak, I remember he would cry out loud and ask, how many Christians know the circumstances of Jesus? How many Christians know Jesus' heart?
저는 그때 느꼈어요. 이 세상에서 예수님을 제일 사랑하시는 분이 누구냐 하면은 아버님이시라는 것을 저는 절감했던 것입니다.
And I could see for certain then that no one in the world loved Jesus more than Father.
영계에 계시는 예수님께서 아버님이 저렇게 통곡을 하시고 가슴을 치면서 우시는 그 입장을 예수님이 생각하시고 또 보신다면은 얼마나 참 마음이 아프셨을까 생각했습니다.
And I thought how Jesus must feel to be in the spirit world and to see Father weeping so loudly in that way, and that must make Jesus also feel very painful.
저는 그 말씀을 들을 때마다 참 아버님께서 예수님의 사정을 어떻게 저렇게 아시고 예수님의 심정을 예수님의 실천하시는 그 내용을 얼마나 아시고 절감하셨으면 저렇게 통곡이 나오고 저렇게 가슴 아픈 사연을 말씀하셨을까 느꼈던 것입니다.
And when I heard Father speak this way, it amazed me that he knew so much about Jesus and about Jesus' circumstances and heart. And I wondered, how is it possible that he could know so much and could see how deeply he loved Jesus and how close he was to Jesus.
다른 사람이 예수님에 대해서 얘기하는 것보다가 정말로 아버님께서 오신 아버님께서 말씀을 하실 때는 그냥 지나가는 가벼운 얘기가 아니었고 거기에는 말 못할 사연이 많고 거기에는 참으로 표현할 수 없는 그 내용들이 많이 숨겨져 있었다는 것을 아버님의 모습을 보고 저는 많이 느꼈던 것입니다.
I witnessed how every time Father spoke about Jesus, it was not just a frivolous or light-hearted way. I could see that there was a tremendous content that Father had that we were not aware of, that there were things that he knew that could not be expressed in words.
그 말씀을 들으신 예수님도 정말로 아버님과 심정적으로 일체가 되고 심정적으로 주고받으면서 많은 사연, 할 수 없었던 이야기, 숨겨졌었던 내용, 비밀로서 감추어졌던 많은 내용들을 아버님이 말씀하시고 예수님이 들으시면서 함께 일체 이상을 이루었다는 것을 저는 느꼈던 것입니다.
And I thought to how Jesus, listening to Father, must have felt, how Father was speaking about things that have been unknown, that Jesus could not reveal until then, and that how this was bringing complete unity between Father and Jesus.
십자가에 달려 돌아가실 때의 예수님의 입장은 참으로 억울하고 불쌍하고 무엇이라고 행언할 수 없는 그런 아픈 가슴을 부둥켜 안고 예수님은 가셨습니다.
When Jesus was crucified on the cross, it was a completely unjust situation, and how terrible it must have been for him, and how wretched he must have felt to be killed in this way.
아버님께서 이 사정과 이 심정을 아시었기에 그래도 예수님은 위로를 많이 받으시고 가슴 가운데 참으로 억울하게 말 못할 사정을 아버님께 토로하면서 정말로 이 땅 위에 하나님의 나라를 이루어야 되겠다는 것을 함께 의논했을 것으로 생각이 되어집니다.
And how much comfort it must have given Jesus to see that our Father understood, that Father could feel his pain, and how much he must have then also told Father about his situation then, and how he must have been comforted to see how Father was working to establish God's kingdom on this earth.
그래서 여기에 말씀을 보면은 죽을 입장에서 예수로 말미암아 다시 살아난 바로 누구냐면은 바라바 됐어. 바라바가 복받은 사람이었습니다.
But there was one man who lived as a result of Jesus' crucifixion, and that was Barabbas.
예수님은 십자가에 돌아가셨다가 무슨 말씀 하셨느냐 하면은 가실 때에 내가 다시 온다고 말씀했습니다.
As Jesus was dying, when he was about to die on the cross, he said, I will return.
내가 십자가로 가지만은 이제 다시 올 때도 역시 십자가로 다시 와야 한다는 말씀도 하셨습니다.
He said that although I go by the cross, I will also return by the cross.
예수님이 돌아가셨던 그때 환경이 그대로 지금 세계적인 현상으로서 열매를 맺어야 하는 때가 되면은 끝날이 된 때라고 말씀하셨습니다.
The environment that existed in Jesus' time is now bearing fruit on the worldwide level, so that there is that parallel. And Jesus said that would be the time, that would be the end times in which he would return.
두 강도는 강도 노릇을 했으니까 얼마나 죄를 많이 지었습니까?
Now the two thieves, of course, they had committed a lot of sin during committing a lot of theft.
그렇지만은 좌편 강도는 거기에서도 자기가 잘못을 저질러 놓고도 잘못됐다고 생각지 아니하고 오히려 예수님에게 대해서 많은 참소를 했던 것입니다.
Now the thief on the left, even though he had committed a lot of sin, refused to acknowledge this and in fact accused Jesus.
그렇지만은 우편 강도는 그와는 대조적이었습니다. 어떻게 대조적이었느냐 하면은 하나님은 정말로 살아계신 하나님이었고 모든 것을 아시는 분이었고 역사를 움직이시는 하나님이시라는 것을 그는 느끼고 알았던 것입니다.
But the thief on the right was different. The difference was that he realized and he could feel that God was a living God and that God was in charge of the situation.
그 좌편 강도는 예수님께 대해서 내가 이 벌을 받는 거 하나님이 계신다면 이렇게 내가 받을 수 있겠느냐? 하나님은 죽었고 하나님은 없고 그러기 때문에 내 처지, 내 입장이 지금 이것이라고 한탄하면서 하나님이 없다는 것을 더욱 강조했습니다.
The thief on the left was saying, how could I be punished in this way? This is unfair. If God were alive, if there were a living God, then he wouldn't allow this to be done.
그때 예수님은 아무 말도 하시지 않았습니다.
Jesus didn't say anything then.
그리고 오른편 강도가 우리가 행한 일에 대하여 상당한 보응을 우리는 받아야 한다.
The thief on the right said that we are being punished according to our crimes.
우리가 벌을 받는 것은 당연하다고 생각하면서 정말로 예수님이 하셨던 모든 일은 옳지 않는 것이 하나도 없다고 하면서 그는 죽어가면서 정말로 예수님 편이 되어서 예수님 편만 될 것이 아니었고 예수님이 이제 오실 때에 나라가 임할 때에 나를 좀 기억해 주소서 하는 애원을 했던 것입니다.
He said that it was right that they be punished, and but he said that Jesus, though had committed no crimes, that he was innocent, and he asked Jesus that when your kingdom comes, please let me be with you.
그때 예수님은 오늘 네가 나와 함께 낙원에 있으리라는 말씀을 했습니다.
And Jesus told him that in that day, the thief on the right would go with him to paradise.
그는 죽는 자리에서 구원을 받았습니다.
The thief on the right received salvation at the moment of his death.
오른편 강도는 역사 이래 죽어가면서도 천국을 계문하신 분이 누구냐 하면은 오른편 강도였습니다.
And so, through history, it was the thief on the right that has opened the gates to heaven.
그는 천국을 계문하는 정말로 선봉이 되었던 것입니다.
He stood at the forefront of that work to open the gates of heaven.
우리가 알 수 있는 것은 이 하나님이 없다는 공산주의, 하나님이 없다고 하는 이 좌편 강도, 이 좌익은 예수님 때부터 있었던 것입니다.
And we can see that communism, which says that God does not exist, the leftists who say that God does not exist. This kind of thinking existed even in the time of Jesus in the person of the thief on the left.
그래서 공산세계는 지금 오래가지 못하고 지금 점점 쇠퇴해지고 있는 것입니다.
That is why today the communist world is not able to endure any longer and is disappearing.
그래서 우편은 하나님은 살아있고 하나님은 지금도 살아서 역사를 움직이고 있다는 것을 아주 증명하고 증거하고 있습니다.
The thief on the right represents those who say that God is alive and that He is active in our lives and in history, and He is carrying out spiritual works.
우편은 하나님은 영원히 존재하며 하나님이 계시지 않는 것이 아니라 하나에서부터 열까지 하나님은 살아서 움직인다는 것을 하나님 편의 선자들은 증언하고 있으며 또 우리는 증언해야 할 것입니다.
The thief on the right represents those who say that God is alive, that He is, the thief on the right testified to the fact that God is living, and we must also testify to that fact.
그래서 우리는 정말로 생명을 바쳐서 공산당과 싸워서 승리해야 하고 이것으로서 세계를 살리는데 앞장서지 않으면 안 될 것입니다.
And so we must fight against communism, even putting our lives on the line in order to do so, so that we may bring salvation to the world.
이 아침 우리가 다시 느껴야 할 것은 정말로 하나님은 살아계신다는 것을 우리는 역사를 통해서 알 수 있는 것이고 또 더 나아가서 되어지는 과거, 현재, 미래를 통해서 하나님은 죽은 하나님이었고 살아계신 하나님이라는 것을 우리는 절감하고 살아야 될 것입니다.
This morning, let's remind ourselves that God is alive, He is a living God, and that we can see this through history. God knows the past, present, and future, and He is active in the world today.
지금 세계는 개인주의의 시대요, 개인주의의 세계로 흘러가고 있습니다.
Today, the world is in the era of individualism and is going further in that direction.
아버님께서 늘 말씀하시기를 무슨 말씀하셨느냐 하면은 미국을 위하여 살면은 이거는 다 없어지고 마는 것이고 영국은 영국만을 위해서 살 때는 이것은 다 자치를 감출 때가 올 것이라고 늘 말씀했던 것입니다.
My father often said that if America lives only for America, then it will eventually disappear. Or if United Kingdom lives only for the UK, it will also disappear. It cannot last.
그래서 우리는 이제 뭘 해야 되느냐 하면은 나쁜 것은 다 배격하고 정말로 좋은 씨를 심어서 하나님의 뜻에 맞는 일을 하고 또 하나님의 뜻을 위한 내 개인, 민족, 나라를 우리가 세우지 않으면 안 될 것입니다.
And so we must plant the seeds of God's word, of God's will. And we must build families and nations and world that will live for the sake of God's will.
내 나라만 위하여 살지 말고 모두가 개인을 떠나서 정말로 형제의 심정으로 사랑하며 세계가 다 같이 손잡고 하나의 세계, 선의 세계, 사랑의 세계, 아버지의 나라 이 천일국을 이 땅 위에 우리가 세우지 않으면 안 될 것입니다.
So let's live for not just for the sake of our own country, but for the world, and so that God's 천일국 can be established.
제가 처음 아버님께 찾아갔던 날 아버님은 이런 말씀을 했습니다. 무슨 말씀을 하셨는가 하면은 이제 세계가 다 같이 함께 잘 살 수 있는 지상천국 니상주의 세계, 즉 파라다이스, 천국을 이 땅 위에 건설하는 일을 건설하는 역사를 내가 만들러 왔다고 말씀하셨어요.
On the first day that I met Father, there was something that he told me. He said that the time is coming when everyone in the world will be able to live well, when this will be a world in which that kind of a paradise will be established.
그래서 아버님은 정말로 일생을 천일국을 이 땅 위에 이루기 위해서 오셨으며 천일국을 이 땅 위에 창건하기 위해서 살아온 모든 전체가 그것을 위해서 살아왔던 것입니다.
Father came for the purpose of establishing Cheonryuk in this world, and he spent his entire life doing everything he could to build Cheonryuk.
천일국, 우리는 밤낮 이 나라를 위하여 먹고 자고 살아야 할 것입니다.
So we must live for the sake of Cheonryuk, whether we eat or whether we're sleeping or whatever we do. It must be for the sake of that purpose.
나는 이 천일국 이 나라 때문에 태어난 나이라는 것을 우리는 실감하면서 살아야 될 것입니다.
And we need to understand that we were born for the sake of Cheonryuk.
아버님이 옛날에 이런 말씀을 하셨어요. 정말로 하나님의 나라 천국을 이 땅 위에 이루어 놓아야 되는데 얼마나 간절했으면 아버님은 무슨 말씀을 하셨는고 하면은 세계 인류의 침대를 다 포개어 놓고 나는 그 제일 꼭대기에서 내가 잠을 자야 한다. 왜냐하면은 내가 살아도 죽어도 내가 여기에 내가 미쳐서 살고 이것을 위하여 온 사람이고 이것을 세우기 위한 것이 내 사명이었기 때문에 나는 이렇게라도 하지 않으면 안 된다고 말씀하셨습니다.
My father said that he could not sleep well at night, even because he had to concentrate, always focus on building Cheonryuk.
어디에 앉더라도 내 혼자만 앉는 것이 아니야. 여기에는 세계 인종을 다 모아놓은 제일 꼭대기에 나는 앉아서 이들을 위해 기도하고 이들이 정말로 잘 살 수 있고 잘 될 수 있는 이 길을 위해서 나는 태어난 사람이라고 말씀하셨습니다.
He said that wherever I sit down, I don't just sit alone. I have to sit together with all the races of the world, so that everyone can work together to build this kingdom.
밥상을 놓고도 아버님은 무슨 생각을 하셨느냐 하면은 세계 인류가 먹는 모든 밥상 이것을 생각하면서 세계 인류가 정말로 참 나와 더불어 이 뜻을 같이 하고 이 심정을 같이 하고 이 역사를 같이 하면서 살았으면 얼마나 좋을까 하면서 아버님은 때로는 탄식하고 때로는 그 세계가 이루어졌다는 뜻에서 아주 기쁜 심정을 가졌던 때도 있었던 것입니다.
When Father would sit down to a meal, he wouldn't just eat by himself, but he would think of what everyone else in the world was eating, and he would say how wonderful it would be if everyone could share a meal together. And he would pray for that kind of world to come. And also, at times, he would declare that type of world had already arrived.
사탄 세계의 권위를 능가하는 영광의 자리를 차지하고 사는 것이 오늘 하늘 자녀의 생활이라고 말씀하셨습니다.
He said that the children of heaven must be able to sit in a position of glory that exceeds that of Satan.
하나님이 사랑하신다면 그런 아들, 딸을 사랑하실 수밖에 없는 것이라고 말씀하셨어요.
And he said that God would have no choice other than to love such children who could do that.
내가 사탄만 못한 아들, 딸이 되면 아버지의 위신이 서지 않는다는 생각으로서 사탄을 능가하고도 남을 수 있는 자리에 우리는 서야 한다고 아주 아버님이 외쳤던 것입니다.
He said that if he was a son who cannot even be as much as Satan, then how much that would bring sorrow to God. So he said that the sons and daughters of God needed to be able to exceed the position of Satan.
우리도 아버님을 닮아서 이런 생각을 가지고 정말로 매일매일 전진하지 않으면 안 될 것입니다.
We also need to learn from that heart that was expressed by Father and to move forward each day in that way.
그래서 정말로 우리의 생활 또 우리의 이념이 전 세계와 손을 잡고 사는 너희들이 되어달라고 아버님은 꾸짖으시기도 하고 달래기도 했었던 것입니다.
And Father always wanted us to join hands with the people around the world in order to bring this about.
그래서 우리의 생활 이념이 정말로 세계와 인연을 맺고 살면 세계는 기필코 우리와 가까워질 수 있으며 세계가 우리에게 다가오는 것이 정한 이치이니 우리는 이렇게 해서라도 정말로 오늘 땅 위에 천일국을 우리는 정말로 창건하는 우리가 되자고 하소연하기도 했던 것입니다.
And Father would encourage us to establish our relationships with the entire world, so that we could work together in order to accomplish God's kingdom.
그래서 우리도 잠시도 우리는 아버님과 같은 이 생각을 우리는 놓치지 말고 언제든지 가슴속 깊은 데서 참으로 세계와 인연을 맺고 오늘 이 땅 위에 하늘나라를 이 땅 위에 우리가 찾아 세워야 된다는 이런 간절한 심정을 가지고 우리가 나타날 때에 여기에 하늘의 세계는 세워질 것이고 하늘의 역사는 여기에서 열매를 맺을 수 있을 것입니다.
So let's also have that urgency that Father had for establishing God's kingdom. And when we do, then God's kingdom will truly be able to come on this earth.
지금 우리는 많은 핍박과 어려움을 우리 자신들이 당하고 있습니다마는 아버님의 그 심정, 아버님이 생각하셨던 내용을 생각하면은 우리는 약해지지 말고 기어코 이 땅 위에 천일국을 세워서 온 땅 위에 인류들이 부러워하면서 찾아올 수 있는 그 땅을 그 나라를 반드시 우리는 이루어 놓고 가야 할 것입니다.
We are receiving a lot of persecution today, but let's not allow that persecution to make us weak. Instead, let's move forward with the conviction that we are establishing God's kingdom on this earth.
이제 아버님은 후계자를 세우시고 또 대신자를 세우시고 상속자로 축복해 주시고 기도해 주시고 대관식까지 하셨으니 안심하실 수 있겠습니다마는 우리는 정말로 여기에 어떤 역사, 어떤 열매를 맺어야 되느냐면은 실질적으로 아버님께 보여드릴 수 있는 그 내용, 그 역사를 이루어야 할 것입니다.
God, Father has established His successor. He has established His representative body and inheritor, and is working through him. And so Father can do that and can rest now, and He can feel comforted now. But we need to work hard in order to accomplish this will.
아버님이 후계자요 내 대신자라고 축복하시고 나서 얼마나 흐뭇해하셨을까 저는 생각했습니다.
And I have thought how much Father must have been glad to be able to establish his representative body and inheritor, and to be able to pray over him and to crown him 3 times, and to give him the blessing of true parents.
우리는 이대 왕 되시는 내외분과 하나가 되어서 정말로 사탄이 참소할 수 없는 그 나라와 그 세계, 참소할 수 없는 그 열매를 우리는 꼭 맺어 들어야 할 것으로 우리 모두가 결의하고 우리 모두가 생각하고 그 세계의 주인이 되어 주시기를 바랍니다. 고맙습니다.
We need today to become one with the king and queen, the second king and queen, and make a firm determination that we will work to establish God's kingdom on this earth with them. Thank you very much.
And we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back this Monday, April 10th, 2017, The King's Report. I'm your host, Hyungjin Sean Moon, the second king of Cheongguk. And let's go now to a wonderful movie that has come out. I want to show everybody the theatrical trailer of the Case for Christ official trailer. Let's take a look at this.
If somebody wanted to do an investigation into Christianity, where would you start?
If the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen, it's a house of cards.
You sure you want to give me that loaded gun?
I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to pull the trigger.
I've spent my entire career as a journalist uncovering the truth. Until the day my wife presented me with the biggest story of my life.
I'm not gonna lose my wife and my kids to something that I can't even reason with.
And what happened next changed me forever.
How can we even talk about historical evidence for the resurrection?
The Gospels are filled with contradictions.
The empty tomb is based on evidence. And isn't evidence your trade?
We all bet our lives on something.
The question is, what's it going to be?
As much as I would like to help out a fellow skeptic, what you're proposing is impossible.
Could Jesus survive being spiked to the cross?
There is no evidence of anyone ever surviving a full Roman crucifixion.
Just because I write something down and I bury it in the dirt, that doesn't make it true.
What I felt was something more real than anything I've ever felt in my life.
I'm praying for you.
Do you really want to know the truth, or is your mind already made up?
Stop blaming me and the church and God and do your job.
And no one's ever proven if the shroud is the actual burial cloth of the Christ. But whenever someone looks in those eyes for the first time, suddenly becomes a real person.
So, hopefully we'll be doing a nice trip out there to one of the movie theaters in the area to see this as a community. Wouldn't that be wonderful, Tim? When they go down, and this is, of course, a wonderful story, a real story, a true story. And here you can see Lee Strobel right down here, actually giving the case for Christ right here in this one of these videos that are connected to it here, right there. There's our Sunday service yesterday, and the case for Christ right there. Also, another interesting trailer here, 2017, the Second Coming of Christ. Maybe we'll look at that another time. I don't know exactly what that's. I've never seen that trailer, so maybe I'll take a look at that a little later. But very powerful, Christian movies that are coming out and becoming alternatives to the secular, dumbed down propaganda media and Hollywood that permeates our culture and that just infiltrates every single aspect of of the crevices of our minds and the little folds in our cerebral cortex. I mean, there's no opposition to it. There's no alternative to it. And now these Christian-based companies are actually producing very high quality movies that are now able to hit the box office and do quite well, and also compete in the actual market. So that's a huge development. In the 70s and 80s, there was nothing like that. There was nothing like that in the movie theaters. 90s, I mean, there was nothing like that. There's no alternatives to the popular movies. But these are real stories. This is based on the actual story by Lee Strobel, his own life testimony, and his walk in faith. And as an atheist, he was the head of the Chicago Tribune as the head editor and journalist there. He was a graduate, I believe, of some of the Ivies. Can't remember exactly. But eventually, and actually wanted to seek and disprove Christianity and wanted to show the whole world with the Chicago Tribune that Christians were just a bunch of just lunatics, and they were just, dumb, brain dead, brainwashed cult, people. And you know how the atheists say about Christians, and that they're just Bible thumping, etc. Yale. He went to Yale, right? Yale Law School. And he went on this whole journey to actually dig into the evidence for Christ. If there's evidence for Christ, if there's evidence for his resurrection, if there's evidence for historical evidence, because we have such prominent, scholars that try to give a view of the gospel, especially at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and those very, very liberal, progressive, communist institutions. Give a perspective of the view of the Bible that anybody who believes in the Bible, anybody who believes in the Bible as the Word of God, is kind of insane, is kind of unintelligent, is not based on evidence, is not fact-checking, etc. And so thus, there's many contradictions in the Bible. The Gospels have different contradictions. One Gospel says this, one Gospel says that. There are many different different usages and translations. There's not enough evidence for Christ and his resurrection, or Christ at all. Maybe Jesus wasn't even a historical figure. All these sort of very mainstream issues that were, of course, pushed by quote theologians who were, quote, based on what Harvard calls the historical critical method. And trying to, of course, disprove and debunk the faith of Christianity, the faith of Christians. And of course, they've been mainly successful with becoming more mainstream, Discovery Channel, History Channel, and and those type of institutions and organizations perpetuating the certain theories of Christ, that he may not be a historic figure, that he may have, actually survived the cross, that he, from an Islamic perspective, didn't die on the cross, etc. And these ideas have become more mainstream and have taken away from the actual apologetics of Christianity. So this is a revival of that. Lee Strobel being one of the not necessarily, I would say, the philosophical apologist, but a apologist who has incredible testimony, incredible, and goes through journalistic sort of evidence in his, argument and his thesis that is, I would say, tied to William Lane Craig, who is the top apologist and philosopher and theologian in the apologetics world. Lee Strobel is, of course, connected to him. He actually goes and interviews him at some point. But Lee Strobel, of course, being very, very potent and able to reach a larger audience because he's able to simplify a lot of the very complex arguments sometimes that people like Alvin Plantinga make with the ontological argument, or people like William Lane Craig make, etc. So we highly recommend, have seen very good reviews for this movie. And of course, it's generating a lot of interest and excitement within the body of Christ because it is a movie which is coming from PureFlix, an alternative to degraded, sex-obsessed, philandering, free sex culture, orgy culture, Satanism, sex rituals, occult, Hollywood movies. So it is a very interesting alternative. Hopefully we'll be able to do a wonderful trip out to the Dixon City AMX Theater. Is that right? Is that the AMX Theater out there? The AMX Theater. Very nice theater, by the way.
I don't know the brand name, but
it's a really nice theater. It's a very nice theater. And we go hopefully make a trip out there and see that with our community. I'm interested to maybe let's see this one here. This is Second Coming of Christ here. This looks like from Flawless Productions. I'm interested to let's see this with everybody before we go to break. I'm going to see what this is all about here.
The following presentation has been awarded the Family Approved Seal by the Dove Foundation.
Yaludazmen Quidima Hidawet Patrachai Hatle Hasa Pashliva Hanav Yisu Nashchaya Berech Dalacha Hanav Beri Talyadi Lisim Lemapulfa Tusagie Bisrael.
Did you do this?
Do what, John?
What you say is true. It has begun. The apocalypse. But do you people think that it started with companies like New World Genetics, altering of life, with the pollution, the pesticides? No. It started a long time ago. It started when we told God that we don't need him anymore, and we welcomed in the other one, and he became our new resident, our resident evil. And it's true, we conquered the plague that is cancer. But a new disease will arise, deadlier, stronger. We must surrender to prayer and to faith. That is the only way we will survive.
You are the devil! I'll destroy you!
You will be dead in immortality because your soul will belong to the other one.
So that's another movie, I guess, coming out. I don't know if that's actually going to be in the box office, but of course, The Case of Christ is. And this is really wonderful that these kind of stories are coming out, and they're making them. You know, there's the access to high tech and access to very high quality video and HD now that normal people can get, and a lot of these Christian production companies are not, they don't have the Hollywood budgets. But they're still able to produce many different things. You know, they have like those stabilizing cameras now that you can buy very, very cheap. They used to cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and normal people could not afford them. But they now sell them on Amazon for just a couple $100, or even some under $100. That actually helps stabilize your camera, and you can run through the woods, for example, and that camera will stay flat. It won't be bobbling around, and it'll stay flat. And as you're running through the woods, you get these incredible panoramic shots. That kind of technology was so expensive. Now it's become so much more affordable and accessible to people, and people now are able to make very high quality things, and that allows them to make alternatives at very high level. And of course, HD cameras now are very much more affordable. I mean, you can shoot things off your handphone, off your smartphone, and get super high quality definition now. So it's just amazing. That's the good thing about technology, is that it can also, it's of course weaponized to control populations, to promote a certain communist agenda. That's the predominant use of technology, especially with Hollywood and centralized archangel power. But on the flip side, God's side can use technology too and make cool, avant-garde, excellent theatrical imagery and cinematography as well. So that's also the flip side. That can also be an alternative, sort of spiritually weaponized, so that it can at least present a different view. And that's a really wonderful thing in the Christian community that's happening now, producing these excellent, high quality things. Not movies that you look at and say, oh my gosh, that's kind of embarrassing. But really say, wow, that's pretty dang good. That's really good. I enjoyed that. So we're happy to see those movies. Hopefully we'll do a trip out to AMX Theater in Dixon City. And hope everybody can join us there to see The Case for Christ. If you can, check it out and support these kind of movies that help these companies produce more alternative, good quality, pro-family and pro-God messages. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report. I'm your host, Hyungjin Sean Moon, the second king of Cheonryugung on this beautiful morning at the Cheonryugung, broadcasting live from the Cheonryugung Palace. Now to our top news section. Top news on Drudge. Red Line Row. Russia and Iran pledge to hit back against further serious strikes as they blast U.S. for crossing red lines. The Command Center for the two countries and allied groups released a joint statement today saying that they would respond to future breaches of red lines with force. Russia and Iran have said they will respond to further military American actions following the airstrike in Syria last week. In a joint statement, the Command Center for the two countries and allied groups said we will respond to any aggression. The statement read, what America waged in an aggression on Syria is a crossing of the red lines. From now on, we will respond with force to any aggressor or any breach of red lines from whoever it is, and America knows our ability to respond well. The warning comes on the same day that a Russian politician warned the North Koreans could strike at any time. A 7-year-old Syrian girl tweeted her support for Trump's missile strikes. The president blasted claims his 59 missile strikes on Syrian airfield missed targets. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani condemned flagrant U.S. aggression on Syria following the missile strikes on the Syria airbase in response to a suspected chemical attack by the Syrian government on innocent civilians. The Iranian leader, a Kiev Syrian dictator Assad, called yesterday for an impartial investigation into chemical attacks that killed at least 70 people. So again, Russia now standing and stating very strongly with Iran, showing that Putin, of course, is not a saint. Not a saint, and of course it is beginning to escalate.
Well, Tillerson's going to be in Moscow on Wednesday this week, meeting with his counterpart there, and I'm interested to see what comes out of that meeting. If Tillerson, he actually received the Friendship Award from Russia in 2013, so we'll see how much he can do to kind of smooth things over. But it's a very serious situation now. Yes.
So we can see that kind of scenario. That is top news on Drudge. Let's go to a video now. This one definitely has a warning for graphic images. But let's go to a video, Syrian chemical attack produced by Infowars.com.
There is breaking news now from the war in Syria, and this could be significant. Reports that chemical weapons have been used in that conflict.
These are some of the scenes now circulating on the internet of distressed children apparently suffering the after effects of a chemical attack. Some of the video footage is too distressing to broadcast, and it is unverified. But there are scores of dead, among them very young children.
Good afternoon, everybody. 10 days ago, the world watched in horror as men, women, and children were massacred in Syria in the worst chemical weapons attack of the 21st century.
The Assad regime, and only undeniably the Assad regime, unleashed an outrageous chemical attack against its own citizens.
After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets.
We can tell you beyond any reasonable doubt that our evidence proves the Assad regime prepared for this attack.
I've watched debates in Congress. A congressman asked Mr. Kerry, is there Al-Qaeda? People say they've gotten stronger. He says, no. I say officially, they aren't there. The main combat unit, the so-called Al-Nusra, is a unit of Al-Qaeda. They know about this. It's not pleasant for me to see this. Well, we communicate with them and assume that they are decent people. He lies openly, and he knows that he lies.
We're not really positive who set off the gas. I mean, the group that's most likely to benefit from that is Al-Qaeda.
Did President Bashar Assad gas his own people? Not according to a growing number of skeptics, including Alex Jones, syndicated radio talk show host.
I don't know who launched the chemical attack, but all the evidence leans towards the rebels having the motive to do it. And the Russians have put out a new report saying they have proof the rebels did it back in March of this year.
Some people here and there, amazingly, have questioned the evidence of this assault on conscience. I repeat here again today that only the most willful desire to avoid reality can assert that this did not occur as described, or that the regime did not do it.
All right, so what kind of proof is there that the rebels would do this? I mean, the rebels supposedly are supporting the people of Syria. They would actually sacrifice their own people in order to draw America into this war to start World War III?
Well, look, the rebels are made up of jihadis, al-Qaeda, and some domestic Syrians, but around 60%, many studies show, are al-Qaeda, are jihadis. They've been wiping out whole Christian villages. So I don't think the rebels represent the Syrian people.
I believe you will not deny the fact that one hardly should back those who kills their enemies and eat their organs and all that is filmed and shot. Do you want to support these people? Do you want to supply arms to these people?
There's a growing volume of new evidence from numerous sources in the Middle East, mostly affiliated with the Syrian opposition and its sponsors and supporters, which makes a very strong case based on solid circumstantial evidence that the August 21st, 2013 chemical strike in the Damascus suburbs was indeed a premeditated provocation.
I would not understand or comprehend that Bashar al-Assad, no matter how bad a man he may be, would be so stupid as to order a chemical weapons attack on civilians in his own country, when the immediate consequence of which might be that he would be at war with the United States.
So we could be looking here at a frame job. Available data puts the horror in a different and disturbing light, meaning it's not Bashar doing the horrible things. It's the rebels nerve-gassing themselves, framing Bashar, setting him up so that the al-Qaeda guys win, and then we end up on the side of al-Qaeda, and you've heard that.
So this reeks of a false flag operation.
I can't see fighting to impose Sharia law in Syria. I also can't see sending my son to fight with Islamic rebels against Christians. I also can't see my son going to fight on the same side as al-Qaeda.
We should be focused on defending the United States of America. That's why young men and women sign up to join the military, not to as you note, serve as al-Qaeda's Air Force.
أسامة بن لادن يا مرعب أمريكا من قوة الإيمان وسلاحنا البيكا أسامة بن لادن يا مرعب أمريكا من قوة الإيمان.
We are following breaking news, reports of a gas or some kind of chemical attack in Syria, killing dozens.
Well, not surprisingly, there has been widespread international condemnation, with many Western leaders already pointing the finger of blame at President Assad.
With this scientific examination, it has been determined that Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, has used a chemical weapon.
I've seen absolutely nothing to suggest that, or rather to lead us to think that it is anything but the regime.
The broader issue here, of course, is then what happens next? What does the international community do? Do they allow this attack to happen with impunity the same way that we saw happening in 2013?
Every attack in Syria, the words grow ever stronger.
but they're essentially the same.
You have people who are in Congress and in the United States, the general public, making statements condemning the attacks, but not really an interest to go to war. Answer the $1 million question, which is, what is the military action going to be?
So you're for all attacks, all of you. Attack Assad.
Yes.
Attack Assad militarily?
I think there's other options first, but I would be happy with that conclusion.
What's the other one?
So yesterday we laid out the limited options in Syria, from a full-scale ground invasion to establishing a no-fly zone.
I want him to hear him say, we're going to arm the Free Syrian Army. We are going to dedicate ourselves to the removal of Bashar Assad. We're going to have the Russians pay a price for their engagement. The Iranians and Hezbollah are also heavily involved. All players here are going to have to pay a penalty, and the United States of America is going to be on the side of people who fight for freedom.
What do you want the world to do?
I want to stop the war, and I want the children of Syria play and go to school, live in peace. Together we can help them. Together we can save them. Why can't you stop the war?
I don't know, Bana. I don't know why the world can't stop the war in Syria.
So you say you see these, you hear that plea from her, you see the images coming out of Syria, and you think the best policy for the United States right now
using children to do the war propaganda.
The time is long past where we should be looking at strikes against Assad's chemical weapons facilities.
I think something has to happen. I would encourage any kind of movement by the international community.
I would advise that we have to strike them. But I think most of all, it requires a response. This is outrageous.
Actually, given what he said yesterday, and even if he hadn't said it, I believe there's a need to act there militarily.
We as a country and we as a civilization cannot stand by again and allow another chemical attack to go unanswered again.
So I think it's important that we do punishing strikes against the regime.
You're recommending some options that are pretty robust use of military force. Do you think that this is something that President Trump can do unilaterally, or
yes?
Mr. President, please, in the name of every woman and child and elder who got killed by the Assad regime, please come in and help us.
I'm sure they took note of what our Secretary of State said just the other day, that the Syrian people would be determining their own future themselves. That one of the more incredible statements I've ever heard. That the Syrian people would be determining their own future themselves. Determining their own future themselves. Determining their own future themselves. That one of the more incredible statements I've ever heard.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched.
It's a very good montage piece put up by Infowars.com. They're very good at doing the montage pieces. But okay, again, a very controversial issue. We're here, and Trump has now launched an unconstitutional war on Syria, or an attack on Syria. And of course, our founding fathers, this is the reason why they didn't give it to the executive branch, but of course the heavy centralization and under the previous CIA administrations, all the way stemming from Daddy Bush, Clinton, Baby Bush, Obama, etc., all CIA team, were able to completely centralize, solidify, and empower the executive branch now to wage war, and Obama was flagrantly just waging wars without any congressional approval and or even public debate. We started this attack on the, quote, Syrian chemical factories within 24 hours. And of course, they were pushing the propaganda of dead babies. Let's look at this other video and this breakdown about propaganda and dead babies.
This shows you how they take a lie, and we're going to explain to you who this girl is when we come back. And they spread it around and spread it around and spread it around, and then you got the president talking about it. And it gets all the way to the president, and then action happens. And this is how it works. This is how they brainwash you. Now, I'm not saying this happened in this instance. There are parallels, though. But this is how they make propaganda work against your brain, against your, it goes into your eyes, into your brain, into your subconscious. Then you're like, oh, dead babies, incubators. Got to do something about it. Let's kill brown people. Let's go into the Middle East. Let's take it over. So here's that clip.
They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
I can only ask how these animals can commit such barbaric and inhuman acts and then deny that these acts ever took place.
Premature infants in incubators were sentenced to die by having the incubators removed.
The hardest thing was burying the babies. I myself buried 14 newborn babies that had been taken from their incubators.
Now is the time to check the aggression of this ruthless dictator whose troops have bayoneted pregnant women and have ripped babies from their incubators in Kuwait.
I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died that day as well.
And they had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
All right, so that was the montage I put together. Let me tell you something. I remember this so clearly when this happened. Millions of us watched
babies in incubators. Babies in incubators.
Her testimony on television. I mean, millions of us watched it. She was a 15-year-old girl, and this really helped big time generate the support to go into the.
Because we're the good guys.
That's right. We're the good guys.
Go in and help people.
So I mean, it was devastating. So
after we invited Iraq to go into Kuwait because Kuwait was drilling into Iraqi oil fields, no one ever talks about that.
Now
it's always about Saddam invaded Kuwait.
Here's the thing. Everything you just watched, all that testimony was complete bullshit. All right. They were all lying. All right. And that 15-year-old girl, she ended up being, we've come to find out, she was the niece to the Kuwaiti ambassador, right? To the ambassador to Kuwait. And she was recruited by the CIA. She was given acting lessons by a U.S. PR firm in the United States. And her entire testimony was false, right? And even the president of the United States, George Bush Sr., was in on the big lie. So there you go. So we're not saying that no children died in the Syrian chemical attacks. I'm sure children did die, but we're saying this reminds us of that war propaganda where the war drums are beating. And now we've got the UN ambassador. You know, she's Nikki Haley. She's up there.
Former governor of South Carolina.
Very powerful, emotional address to the UN. If you guys could cue that up for me, let's take a look at that next. This reminded me of what you just saw in 1991. That's right. Let's do Nikki Haley and Donald Trump pretty much talking about the same thing. Babies dying. That was in, and this is now. Check it out.
Yesterday morning, we awoke to pictures, to children foaming at the mouth, suffering convulsions, being carried in the arms of desperate parents. We saw rows of lifeless bodies, some still in diapers, some with visible scars of a chemical weapons attack. Look at those pictures. We cannot close our eyes to those pictures. We cannot close our minds of the responsibility to act. We don't yet know everything about yesterday's attack, but there are many things we do know. We know that yesterday's attack bears all the hallmarks of the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons.
Using a deadly nerve agent, Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women, and children. It was a slow and brutal death for so many. Even beautiful babies were cruelly murdered in this very barbaric attack. No child of God should ever suffer such horror.
So if you're going to manipulate people, you're going to do it with dead babies. That's the easiest way to manipulate good, hardworking Christian Americans and others who appreciate.
And let's check that out next.
Bana, do you blame President Assad for this?
Yes, I am very sad about this. 100 Syrians were killed in Syria. They were not terrorists. They were just people. The world is watching. The world doesn't do anything.
And if you watch her eyes, you could see her reading.
Clearly pre-written propaganda lines. She's reading from a teleprompter.
The whole world's watching.
And the whole world is watching. And lo and behold, the next day we have the strikes. So just telling you guys, just be very careful. Don't rush to judgment. I find it highly unlikely that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad would do something like this. He's this close to winning the war.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got Al-Qaeda and ISIS.
Now I'm going to take
on
10
the
steps
run.
backwards.
Yeah, I mean, so why would he do something like this? Look, he's going to regain power or maintain power, I should say. And like I said, this close to winning it all, why would you gas your own people and get the entire international community against you? It just doesn't make
sense. Ron Paul said it.
It looks like it might benefit Assad. So Assad, they claim, now went and released gas to kill a bunch of people. But, Daniel, we might not have much of a job here today because I looked at the New York Times to find out, to get the explanation, and they said, worst chemical attack in years in Syria. U.S. blames Assad. So it's all over and done with. But not quite so easy, is it? What happened 4 years ago in 2013, this whole thing about crossing the red line, and ever since then, the neocons have been yelling and screaming. Even part of the administration is still yelling and screaming about Assad using poison gases on his people 4 years ago. Not quite true.
Yeah, it was never proven, in fact. And the UN official Carla Del Ponte said that attack was most likely done by the rebels based on the evidence. But here you have Nikki Haley, U.S. ambassador to the UN, almost as we speak, literally, at the UN Security Council saying, quote, "We know Assad has used chemical weapons before." It's not true. It has never been proven that he has. He may have. We do know that the rebels have used them. That has been proven.
And who would benefit? It makes no sense, even if you were totally separate from this and take no sides of this, and you were just an analyst. It doesn't make any sense for Assad under these conditions to all of a sudden use poison gases. It's zero. I think it's zero chance that he would have done this, deliberately, and he's doing this now.
Has been rushed off to a Syrian attack. We'll be right back after this short break, covering more of the latest news. Stay with us.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report. I'm your host, Sean Moon, the second king of Chaniguk. And getting back to the whole discussion on the bombings in Syria, we know that 59 bombs were targeted attacks, what they call surgical attacks, were unleashed against the, quote, chemical weapons targets in Syria last week. Of course, this is creating a great controversy because only within 24 hours did they decide to make the decision. It did not go through Congress, and President Trump had gave the go to bomb Syria. Now, who does this help? We have to understand that in the Syrian situation, Assad is literally on the verge of victory, being able to maintain his power, being able to chase out ISIS. ISIS is on the run. ISIS is weakened. And the, quote, Syrian rebel forces, which are ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and those other Saudi Wahhabi radical jihadi organizations are they're on the losing side in Syria. And then, of course, all of a sudden, they claim that they have unequivocal proof that Assad is using chemical weapons on his own people. He's winning the war. He's almost pushed out ISIS. He's almost completely consolidated his power. And now all of a sudden he's going to sabotage all that by unleashing chemical weapons on his own people. And at the same time, they say it's sarin nerve gas. And sarin nerve gas is one of the most deadliest nerve gases and cannot be handled with just rubber latex gloves and a paper mache gas mask, a little paper mask. Most of the video footage that you see is use of the Syrian, quote, chemical attacks are people literally carrying on these bodies who are purportedly saturated with sarin gas. And if you do that, even the doctors are there handling these people with just very limited precautions, where in which sarin gas is conventionally you have to use a hazmat suit, a complete sealed off suit to handle somebody who has been infected or poisoned with sarin gas. Very, very fishy. Very, very, rotten fish smell. If it smells like rotten fish, it's probably some type of rotting fish. But again, the point is that President Trump has used his executive power and has bypassed Congress so that this has not become a political debate. And of course, this is what is lauded by and is praised by people like Hillary Clinton, people like Senator John McCain, the warmongers, people like Fareed Zakaria off of CNN. I mean, these are all globalist warmongers, all super pro-archangel, super pro-political Satanist individuals that are lauding him. They're praising him, saying, yes, he acted decisively, is great. Senator McCain out today saying the reason for the chemical attacks, which he says is by Assad, of course, because he wants war constantly, is the reason why Assad launched those chemical attacks is because of Trump's rhetoric. So he probably thought that Trump was not going to go in and bomb these individuals or Syria, and he did go in, and so McCain can attack that, and so McCain now says, well, you know, the reason why they even launched the chemical attacks in the first place is because of Trump's rhetoric. This is how pathetic these Washington elites are. And they are literally ruling and squatting over civilizations, deciding to enact illegal wars and illegal regime changes again. That's not worked out for us in Libya. That's not worked out for us in Iraq. That's not worked out for us in Egypt. Wherever we go in the Middle East and try to do regime change and try to pretend and moral posture and listen to warmongers like Senator McCain, Hillary Clinton, and Obama, the more we destabilize those countries, the more we drive democratic and freedom-based sovereignty movements that are at least moving in that direction. We drive them out and we let the super radicals come in, fill the vacuum. That's happened not only in Iraq, that's not only happened in Egypt, that's not only happened in Libya, that's happening wherever we touch and try to do a, quote, regime change. And of course, we have all these warmongers always promising us, oh, we want democracy there. We need to fight for the people to be Syria to be free and have democracy. Well, we didn't hear that with Egypt. We need for the Egyptian people to have their own freedom and determine their own destinies. We need democracy there. Didn't we hear that in Iraq? Oh, we need Saddam Hussein. He's got weapons of mass destruction. We need to fight for the Iraqis to have their own democracy. Well, you heard it just in that video clip there with Senator McCain saying, the idea that the Syrian people should choose their own futures, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Because, folks, these elites think you're so stupid and so suicidal, and people are so dumb and suicidal that they have to decide to wage war on your own country and tell you who you should have as a leader. And of course, it's going to be some radical jihadi group that rapes women, use sex as conquest, rape culture, female genital mutilation. If a woman gets raped, she's the one who gets stoned to death, even though she's the victim. This is the type of radical, Wahhabi-backed Orthodox Islam that they are bringing in. And the more they destabilize that region, the more America's influence and the West's influence and democracy's influence wanes and subsides. Now, we know the flaws of democracy. True fathers criticize democracy, and of course we've seen it in America this time, that democracies will be lost to the groundswell of mob mentality. And that about in a 200 to 300 year period, a democratic institution, even a republic, which America was, it became a democracy, and that's why it's been collapsing, because historically democracies cannot survive the test of time. They are always victim to mob rule, because 51% of the people can decide to take away a minority person's rights. 51% of the people can decide to be a violent mob to rob you of your income. 51% of the people can decide to take what you've earned from you. 51% of the population can decide that you are some kind of threat to them, and so that they have to steal your private property and take away your guns. Do you see what I mean? That's why democracies implode and never last. They're only transitionary political systems. They are never permanent. The longest lived political systems are monarchies. They are the most stable political system. However, the problem is, of course, is that they've been historically satanic. They've been tyrannical. They have not protected human rights and the rights of people as given to them by God. They have oppressed people. They have exploited people. And they've had concentrated absolute power. That is why in the kingdom of God, God decentralized that power and makes us co-heirs with Christ in the kingdom of God. That is why the kingship of God in the Chinese Constitution delineates that it is a Republican libertarian monarchy. A monarchy that has a role, a kingship that has a role, but is not concentrated, centralized power into that one individual. The military is not controlled by the king. The legislative branch is not controlled by the king. The executive branch is not controlled by the king. The king is involved in the judicial branch and is essentially the top judge in the country, judging and seeing if the different cases that come up towards whether or not that particular case is in line with the Constitution. But he does not have military control. He does not have law enforcement control. He does not have militia control. He does not have control of citizens' taxation. He does not have control of those things. Those things are banned in the Chinese Constitution. What kind of tyrannical state gives their people the right to private property, the right to guns and bear arms and weapons, the right to organize themselves into armies and militias and police, law enforcement, peace police, peace militia? What kind of What kind of tyrant, tyrannical state can do that? Give those rights to people? Exactly. A state that is not tyrannical. But we have seen after the fall and Satan's kingdoms rule and dominate the world with the archangelic culture and the archangelic desire and the archangelic psychopathy. We have seen the centralized powers. The longest of those that lived are the monarchies, which of course are also satanic. But we know that Christ will come and establish his kingdom, and his kingship will be the king. His line will be the kingship line in the kingdom. Every Christian has to believe that. So a Christian in a modern democratic state has an issue because we've been told that all monarchies are bad. And we've told that all democracy is good. But we've come to the reality check in the last coming up election that we almost lost a democracy. And that democracy historically always are transitional political systems. That they are very unstable because of mob rule. That is the reality of the situation now with President Trump, with this situation in Syria. He is dealing with a very centralized state, of which there are many psychopaths and many, many assassins. Not only are they trying to threaten him because he has blown huge holes in the world government structure. He has destroyed the idea of a world government. He has exploded the stock market growth, $3 trillion in the last 100 days plus. He has brought back hundreds of companies back in the United States, generating about, estimates up to 5 million jobs in the next 5 years. Is that right? 1 million jobs. 1 million jobs in the next 5 years. Already major companies like GE, Fiat Chrysler, Ford, Carrier, and the list goes on and on and on, Samsung, etc., are coming into the United States because of the modifications that he has made to the corporate tax rates and allowing a business-friendly, entrepreneur-friendly culture here in America. He's also gotten us out of the TPP, which is an international scam job in deindustrializing the modern state, the modern economies. Because think about it, folks. What do the dictators hate the most? They don't want to see a nation state leave their system and prosper. Because if they see they leave their system and prosper, their slaves, their people may say, oh, crap, hey, we should copy that system. This kind of thing we're under now is bad. Every dictator is trying to squash out any other alternative system that creates prosperity and wealth because, oh, the people might see that. And you don't want the people to see that. You don't want people to see free markets create success. You don't want people to see freedom and responsibility create success. You don't want people to see that innovation is created in free markets. You don't want to see that. You don't want those dictators don't want their people to see that. Because just then, maybe they might want that. And if they want that, those dictators can't maintain their power. See how that works? That's why these demons that were pushing for a new world order and demons who are pushing for world governance and demons who are using the UN as a trope tool to propagandize the world, to force the world into World War III, and then swoop in as a saviors, claiming that they have the solution to this global crisis, which is a global governance. That's just another word for global communism and global tyranny and dictatorship. And of course, they were creating their own UN military, creating subsidiaries of all the militaries of the world, collectively centralized into the UN central control, so that some group of unelected officials and some boardroom can decide to wage war on you if you say, hey, we don't want to be part of the system, we want to be free. That is insanity. Human beings are not meant to be managed like that, like a farm. This is the type of political Satanism and demonism that we are fighting, folks. We have to understand that Trump has blown humongous holes into this system, into this archangelic apparatus, into the archangelic satanic dream. So he's done tremendous things. He's already decreased border illegal crossings by 40%. He's doing tremendous things. He's trying to turn back America's energy on. He's turning back the coal industry. He's trying to bring back energy. He's going to start. Being a competition for worldwide gas, so that poor people in Africa can have cheap gas, access to gas, and have transportation. And one of the staples of a modern industrialized society is that you have good manufacturing, and you have easy transportation, and you have good access to energy to poor people. If you stop those streams off, poor people cannot get out of their poverty. They don't have the tools. They don't have the resources at a cheap price for them to be able to compete with monopolies and large conglomerates. So Trump is doing tremendous things that are blowing humongous, gaping holes in the beast of the world governance system. However, at the same time, he's surrounded by assassins, he's surrounded by warmongers, he's surrounded by people in the apparatus of the archangelic beast. And he's surrounded by sycophants that are telling him, oh, go to war. You gotta show them, flex your muscles, you gotta show them who's boss. Whether Trump is playing them all, whether or not, we have to see. But again, Russia is threatening to collide with U.S. forces in Syria. Why? Because we've quote, taken out Assad. We've, quote, helping to take out Assad, who the Russians are backing. Because they're backing him because they want to get rid of ISIS. Trump promised that we would help Russia get rid of ISIS. Now he's going back on that promise and now fighting Assad, who was fighting ISIS. Do you understand that? Is this the beginning of the end of Trump? Has he been taken over by the intelligence assassins and the CIA? Has he been taken over by the warmonger rhinos? And will we be put into perpetual warfare again and destabilizing the world again, pushing us into World War III? What will happen? More on this as we come back from this break. Stay with us.
Looking back at me, will we leave behind the innocent to grieve on their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun? These could be our daughters and our sons, and just like a drum I can hear their hearts beat. I know my God won't let them be defeated. to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we lie. Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these. When we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report. I'm your host, Seongjin Sean Moon, the second king of Cheongguk. As we continue to break down the Syria issue, Syria, U.S. warns Assad over using chemical weapons again. The U.S. says it has put Bashar al-Assad on notice that it will take further military action if he uses chemical weapons again, while appearing to back away from the wider military involvement in Syrian conflict less than 24 hours after launching Tomahawk missiles at the regime airbase. The United States will no longer wait for Assad to use chemical weapons without any consequence. Those days are over, says Nikki Haley, U.S. ambassador to the UN. Syrian warplanes were reported to have taken off from the airbase targeted by the U.S. missiles, suggesting that the military impact of the overnight attack had been minimal. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights also said the government aircraft had bombed the outskirts of Khan Sheikhoun, the town targeted in Tuesday's chemical weapons attack. Now, this is very interesting because this shows that the major reports show that there's minimal damage done to Syria. And there is intel on an alternative view that, of course, we know that Tillerson was meeting with Russian contacts before the strikes were done. So essentially, Russia knew that the U.S. would come in to do the strikes, and Russia was told to leave so that no Russians were killed. At the same time, this strike base was a chemical factory that was agreed upon 4 years ago in 2012. Is that 4 years ago? 2013, that it was already agreed between the countries that that would be taken out. That was agreed upon by Assad. That was agreed upon by Russia. That was agreed upon by the US. And so they already agreed upon that 4 years ago. This time around, they agreed, okay, we're going to take that out, that strike base, the air base that we agreed upon 4 years ago, because we have all this pressure from the international community, and especially the left, that Trump is weak, et cetera, et cetera. So if you help him save face, take out this base, which you already agreed upon 4 years ago would be taken out. Allow Trump to look strong. Allow Trump to get out of this ridiculous Russiagate scandal, which is not even a scandal at all. There's no evidence that he's colluded with Russia prior to the elections, or that he's talked with them, even. In fact, it's the opposite. What's coming out is that he was being wiretapped by the U.S. intelligence agencies and Obama illegally. And the alternative view is that he wanted to send a strong message to China, because he was meeting with President Xi Jinping in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. Send him a strong message to say, hey, look, I am strong enough. I am not only a businessman. I will bomb you if you try to take over South Korea. If you don't help us with regime change in North Korea, we will take them out. And we will protect our ally in East Asia, Japan, and South Korea. So you must not infringe on the South Pacific Sea. So there's many angles at this situation, folks. It's a very complex web of political power blocks that are lobbying for power. Of course, what we do know is that these airstrikes are unconstitutional. So regardless of those situations, it is an unconstitutional action. It must go through Congress. The legislative branch is the branch that is given the powers of war. Because the executive branch, historically, in any republic, if there's one centralized decision maker at the head that can wage war, chances are they will wage war. The Founding Fathers knew that, and that is why they invested the power of war making into the legislative branch, where at least there would be a group of people, a group of heads that have to discuss this. Now, of course, there's a problem when those two, quote, groups that are opposing parties are bought off by the same banking cartel. Now, of course, that's a problem. That is not a problem that they foresaw, but it is a problem. It is a way that the banking cartels ended up taking over America and sending us into perpetual warfare by funding and buying each of the politicians from both sides, or at least the main ones from both sides. Because we allow foreign campaign contributions to U.S. elections, which is insane. It is insane to allow foreign powers to buy your politicians. I mean, wouldn't you say that's insane? That is crazy. But that is the current state of affairs in America. And that's why Donald Trump was the outside candidate. That's why everybody in the U.S. wanted to elect him. The majority did, because he was calling out the foreign powers buying our politicians. Now, but getting back to this Syrian strike, that is another angle at this issue. Syrian warplanes were reported to have taken off. So right after this airbase was struck, you can still see Syrian warplanes taking off, which means that that airbase was not really totally devastated.
Well, the airstrip was not hit at all.
The airstrip was not hit at all. So, is Trump, is he playing blackjack? Is it blackjack? Poker. It's poker, right? Poker is the one where you do the faking, right? Yes. You do the faking. What is it called? Bluffing. See, I'm not a big card player, as you can tell. Is Trump playing poker and Russian roulette? Is this a big trope? Is he warding off the political weaponization of the media, saying that he's colluding with Russia, that he's Russia's friends, taking that down by saying, no, I'm attacking what Russia is supporting. But at the same time, really not giving huge infrastructural damage to Assad because he knows Assad is fighting ISIS. And as we can see now, warplanes are still going off and landing on this airbase that we quote struck and devastated. So now even the leftist media and the liberal progressives have to praise Trump, because if they don't, then they're going to be said to be colluding with Russia and supporting Russia and Assad. And that was their argument against Trump. So they can't say that, so he's disarmed them of that attack. At the same time, he's not really done a lot of damage to Assad, whom he knows is fighting ISIS. At the same time, he's alerted Russia that he's going to do that surgical attack, so get your guys out of there so no Russians die. And at the same time, Xi Jinping was sitting with him at lunch and saw him use the missiles and drop the bombs and is realizing that he is going to act tough sometimes. And as a threat towards, that is a veiled threat towards China to back off of South Korea and Japan and deal with the North Korean issue. And at the same time, we have China, this is by Reuters today, offering concessions to avert trade war with the U.S. Reported by Financial Times yesterday on Sunday. China is prepared to raise the investment ceiling in bilateral investment treaty and is also willing to end the ban on U.S. beef imports, the newspaper reported. China was prepared to raise the investment ceiling in the BIT, but those negotiations were put on hold after Trump's victory. U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said on Friday that President Donald Trump and Chinese Xi Jinping have agreed to a new 100-day plan for trade talks on Friday. The U.S. Trade Department was not immediately available for comment, while the Chinese Ministry of Commerce could not be reached for comment. Was Trump sending a message to his global counterparts that he will act decisively, that he was not scared to drop bombs? But at the same time, alerting Russia, staging a kind of, I wouldn't say a false flag, but staging a event where which he could stand and disarm the liberal lunatics from attacking him about being weak. At the same time, he actually is not doing real damage to Assad or the forces that are fighting ISIS. And now further action, he's speaking that way, but we must see what he does. If he goes in and starts saying we must oust Assad, we must do regime change, we must select who will be put in, then we know this is the problem. Then we know he's starting to listen to the rhinos. If he starts escalating the tension with Russia, who now are saying that they will strike American forces, and says, go ahead, do it, let's see it, and goes now launches us into World War III, we know that's a problem. If, however, through this attack, the rhetoric is now that we will attack again, but through this attack, if we pull out more, we don't attack again, we allow Assad to, with Russia, get rid of ISIS. Maybe he starts changing the rhetoric and saying, ISIS is the issue. We must fight ISIS, which he said, which got him in, which was on the campaign trail, and then starts going after ISIS, or at least pulling out of Syria, allowing them to continue to fight ISIS. Only time will tell. This is a super high stakes game of poker. What we do know is that it's not Assad, but it's been proven to be the rebels that have used chemical weapons in the past. And the rebels staging false flag chemical attacks, blaming it on Assad because the ISIS and Al-Qaeda want him out so they can take control of the countries. And we know that logically, it would be crazy for Assad to use chemical weapons, which are a very ineffective way to kill people, that would only generate international outrage. Very ineffective way of killing people. And he's almost winning the war against ISIS. He's that close to winning, and then he sabotages himself by blowing his foot off. I mean, give me a break. There's no motive, as Ron Paul so eloquently described in his Liberty Report. There's no motive for Assad to do it, and so Ron Paul, in his estimation, there's zero chance that he did it. That doesn't mean he's protecting Assad. That doesn't mean he likes Assad. That just means he's saying he doesn't have a motive to do it. But of course, you say anything against the mainstream media using propaganda and using 7-year-old children to read off teleprompters and say, help us, why aren't you doing anything? And guilt shame America into going to war for the war machine and enriching the super elites with the gas money, which we've done constantly in the Middle East, ravaging other people's countries to steal their gas. Meanwhile, acting like we're morally pure and posturing in the United States, saying, oh, we don't drill our oil. Well, you're bombing other countries and drilling their oil. What's wrong with you? You see that problem there? Stop killing other people's countries and taking their oil. We have plenty of the oil here. This is called moral posturing. It's fakery. So many angles, so many incredible things are happening, folks. It is unbelievable time to be alive and seeing this unfolding before our eyes. We have been praying for Trump. We have been praying for our country. We have been praying for the end to these useless, perpetual wars, which just drive us further and further into evil. God's kingdom must come, where we can have righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit, where we can have true freedom, responsibility, true innovation, creativity, and unleash the human potential of humanity without constantly letting the politicians pull us into war and drive us back into degenerate states and bring us back into enslavement under the super elite class constantly. The people are waking up to this. We are sick and tired of it, and we do not want to go to more wars, and especially World War III, which they're trying to start in East Asia and the Middle East. We don't want it. We don't want it. We want peace. We want security. We want fairness. We want freedom. And we are responsible. We'll be right back after this short break.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Back. Welcome back to the King's Report. I'm your host, Hyungjin Sean Moon, the second king of Chaniguk, and now we'll go to Tim for a very important breakdown of the East Asian
Okay, so while things are getting hot in Syria, North Korea's situation is not getting any better either. After the visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping to Mar-a-Lago and the conference, the meetings with President Trump last week, things are continuing to develop. So the United States is talking about redeploying nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula, and they've actually had the aircraft carrier Carl Vinson strike group was leaving the Korean Peninsula, but then they were told to turn around and go back, and so they're on their way back. And so I want to go to a article in the World Tribune that gives an overall roundup of the situation there. This is, while hope remains that China will do more to rein in North Korea, the Trump administration has prepared options to deal with the Kim Jong-un regime that include stationing American nuclear weapons in South Korea and even assassinating the young dictator. Both scenarios were part of an accelerated review of North Korea policy prepared by President Donald Trump's National Security Council in advance of the president's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Trump and Xi wrapped up a two-day summit in Florida on April 7th, and both leaders hailed progress on trade while saying little about a North Korea solution. Obviously, though, North Korea was the major topic at that summit, and as the King reported just a few minutes ago, some agreements were announced or talked about regarding the trade, but North Korea, I guess, was the big elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about that, but we assume that they spent a lot of time talking about that. It says that President Trump indicated to President Xi that we would be happy to work with them, but we understand it creates unique problems for them and challenges that we would and are prepared to chart our own course if this is something China is just unable to coordinate with us, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said. So he's talking about North Korea. So if China is going to do something, we'll work with them. But if this is something they just can't do, then okay, we'll take care of it ourselves, is what Tillerson was saying. The U.S. withdrew all nuclear weapons from South Korea 25 years ago. Returning nukes to the South would mark the first U.S. overseas nuclear deployment since the end of the Cold War. The United States deployed nuclear weapons in South Korea in 1958 after the drawdown following the Korean War. So kind of to the U.S. forces after the Korean War were taken down from 300,000 to 50,000, and in order to kind of fill in the gap, in 1958, nuclear weapons were deployed according to documents that have since been unclassified. Then President Bush in 1991 withdrew all those nuclear weapons, as generally assumed. One thing we don't know about, we have to understand that, is that there are many kinds of nuclear weapons. You know, you have the strategic nuclear weapons. There's the ICBMs that we normally think of as, and the missiles and flying back and forth.
Intercontinental
ballistic missiles. Those are strategic weapons. There are also tactical nuclear weapons. For example, nuclear landmines. We know that some of those were at times deployed in Korea along the DMZ. Nuclear landmines are used to, you can explode them and wipe out a large number of enemy troops, or you can establish certain radiation zones where enemy troops cannot enter, or you can use them to sort of channel enemy troops into a particular area that you then set up as a kill zone. So those are tactical nuclear weapons, and we don't know what kind of nuclear weapons were deployed in Korea in the past, or what kind of nuclear weapons the U.S. is thinking about redeploying, if they do now. But as I said, this would be the first time that the U.S. would deploy nuclear weapons overseas after the end of the Cold War. So this is now a senior intelligence official talking to NBC News. We have 20 years of diplomacy and sanctions under our belt, and that has failed to stop the North Korean program. Duh, yeah. I'm not advocating preemptive war, nor do I think that the deployment of nuclear weapons buys more for us than it costs. But he stressed that the U.S. was dealing with a war today situation on the Korean Peninsula. As an alternative, the U.S. Air Force said it has been practicing long-range strikes with strategic bombers, sending them to the region for exercises and deploying them in Guam and on the Korean Peninsula as a show of force. The second option is the targeting of Kim Jong-un and other senior leaders in charge of the country's missiles and nuclear weapons and decision-making. Retired Admiral James Stavridis, a former NATO commander, told NBC News that decapitation is always a tempting strategy when you're faced with a highly unpredictable and highly dangerous leader. The question you have to ask yourself, he said, is what happens the day after you decapitate? I think that in North Korea, it is an enormous unknown. Now, what we saw with Kim Jong-un when he came into power, he's a young man. When he came into power, I think he was in his 20s, late 20s, and even now he's in his early 30s. And so you would normally think that such a young man would not be able to lead a country as unstable as North Korea. But he was. Why? Because there is a structure there, mostly a military structure that can just bring in pretty much anyone, and the country can somehow stumble on. So if they decapitate Kim Jong-un, what's to prevent them from just bringing in someone else in the same way? If you can bring in someone else and say, oh, look, we found another son of Kim Jong-il we didn't know about until now. Because, the private lives of North Korean leaders are private. And so you can bring in anyone and say, oh, this guy happens to be we've discovered that he's also a son of Kim Jong-il, so he'll be leading the country from now on. The North Korean people probably believe it. The CIA, which would oversee such operations, told NBC News it could offer no guidance on this option. But Stavridis said that he felt it was the best strategy should the U.S. be forced to take military action. He described such action as some combination of special forces with South Korea and cyber. Let's see, I skipped a paragraph here. A third option is covert action, which would see U.S. and South Korean special forces infiltrating into North Korea to sabotage or take out key infrastructure, for instance, blowing up bridges to block the movement of mobile missiles. I know South Korea has tried this before. In fact, they used to send covert operatives into North Korea across the DMZ. But it's extremely difficult, and the people who go in almost never survive, because North Korea is such a controlled society that it's extremely difficult for someone to go in there and survive long enough to actually carry out some kind of an operation. And that's been the history. And I know that U.S. Special Forces are extremely talented and capable and have gone into all kinds of difficult situations. But I think North Korea would present a unique challenge even for them, because it's so highly controlled that it would be very difficult, I think, for them to find any kind of a support base there that they could use. North Korea has a lot of spies stationed in South Korea, in the tens of thousands is sometimes estimated, but there are no similar groups or persons or assets for South Korea or U.S. in North Korea, as far as anyone knows. So that's the situation with North Korea. And the redirection of the Carl Vinson is obviously intended to put more pressure on China, mostly. I think Kim Jong-un is not going to be too much more afraid than he is already. When I say Kim Jong-un, I'm talking about him and also the military establishment that surrounds him. The leadership there has the aura of stability, mostly because that's what they have to have. The military there knows that that is what they have to have. Of course, Kim Jong-un is in charge. We know this because he keeps executing people. He keeps anyone who offends him or anything like that gets executed. So we can see that he exercises authority and exercises power. But I think, though, that if he were decapitated, they would simply bring in a new head. So it's difficult to see what options, real effective options. Hopefully the cyber option would be somehow effective, that somehow the United States or China or Russia, if they're hacking everybody else, why not hack the North Koreans? And why not plant a virus in the North Korean missile system that would derail their development? That would at least buy us more time. We keep buying more time and keep trying to kick the can down the road. but we don't know when that road ends and where you come to a point where you just can't do that anymore, where you have to deal with the actual situation. But that would involve a tremendous loss of life in North Korea, but also in South Korea, because a quarter of the South Korean population lives within just 40 or 50 miles of the border, and within the range of long-range artillery of North Korea. This has been true even since the Olympics in 1988. In fact, in 1988, this was one of the reasons why it was absolutely essential for Russia and China to participate in that Olympics, so that they could keep it in North Korea in check. So but we don't know. This military confrontation on the Korean Peninsula happens every spring, and every spring we wonder, is this going to be the time when there's war in the Korean Peninsula? And we're wondering that again this year. We hope that it is not true. We hope that somehow that war can be avoided, but we don't know. We don't know what will happen. The U.S. South Korean joint military exercises are going to continue for another couple of weeks, scheduled to end at the end of April, and it's always during that time that North Korea manages to manufacture these crises in order to fill their population with fear so that they can be more strictly controlled, but also in order to make trouble for the United States and for China as well in East Asia. We have to follow this day by day to see what happens. We need to pray for God's will to be done there.
Tim, thank you for that breakdown, and we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Like Jesus.
back. Welcome back to the King's Report. I'm your host, Hyungja Sean Moon, the second king of Chaniguk, broadcasting live from the Chaniguk Palace. LA Times report Gorsuch's impact on dividing Supreme Court will begin immediately. Neil Gorsuch joins the Supreme Court just in time to cast potentially significant votes in cases that pit religious liberty against gay rights, test limits on funding for church schools, and challenge California's restrictions on carrying a concealed gun in public. Yes! Yes, yes, yes! Such issues arise either in appeals filed by conservative groups that have been pending before the justice for weeks, and they've been stalling. They've just been continuing to stall. That now brings Gorsuch. With Gorsuch now, conservatives will retain their now get a 5-4 majority restored by his confirmation. The delay may mean one of the justices have been writing a dissent. Okay, this is talking about. Meanwhile, the cases include a Colorado baker's claim that he deserves a faith-based exemption from the state's anti-discrimination law after he refused to design a wedding cake for a gay couple. The justices have been considering his appeal behind closed doors, but they've been stalling, taking no action. The delay may mean one of the justices has been writing a dissent for the majority's refusal to hear the appeal, or perhaps that the conservatives have been awaiting the ninth justice. Gorsuch is set to be sworn in on Monday morning, and when the justices meet in their next private conference on Thursday morning, the new justice will be there. If the court agrees to take up the issue, I think Gorsuch will be with us. Meanwhile, gun rights advocates are challenging a California law that requires gun owners to show, quote, good cause before they issued a permit to carry a concealed gun in public. County sheriffs enforce this policy, and in San Diego, Los Angeles, and other urban counties, permits are rarely granted. In San Diego, for example, officials have taken the position that simply fearing for one's personal safety is not enough to demonstrate good cause. Wow! Wow! Fearing for your own life is not enough cause for you to have the means for you to defend your life. You have to get killed first. You got to get assaulted, raped, or killed first. Exactly, Tim. Thank you. Then you show good cause after you've been raped, killed, or murdered. This is insane. The California loony bin has been taken over by the liberal, lunatic, parasitical, vampire class. And this is what they do to people who are fearing for their lives and can't even defend themselves. Gun rights lawyers have sued, contending the policy violates the Second Amendment and its implied right to self-defense. But last year, the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court, there it is, the Circus Court, Ninth Circus Court, there it is, they're the ones that were going against Trump. U.S. Ninth Circus Court of Appeals upheld San Diego's refusal to grant concealed carry permits and ruled, quote, the Second Amendment does not preserve or protect a right of a member of the general public to conceal carry firearms in public. Of course, the general public, because they're second-class citizens to government officials. As if you wear a badge and you're a government official, have some kind of bureau hat, that you are some kind of super moral human being all of a sudden. And you are granted with special privileged rights. See, this is what the elites want to create. They don't want to create where everybody has the same rights under the law of the Constitution. They want to create a situation where if you do their bidding and work for their federal bureaucracies, then you have more rights, higher pay, higher coverage, higher insurance coverage, higher benefits, higher everything. And if you're a normal person, what do they call it? Members of the general public, you don't have the same rights. You're of a lower class. You're the untouchable caste. You are of a different caste than the Brahmin and the Kshatriyas. Do you understand that, general public? You don't have the same rights as the elitists and the other caste members. Do you understand? This is what the political Satanists always manifest, because it is a nature of Satan and is a nature of federal archangelic power to collude and draw into itself psycho and sociopaths so as to implement Satan's will on earth. And you can't have that being mucked up by some members of the general public who are fearing for their lives and trying to defend themselves from predators. Because you need to have the general public in fear and in total obeisance to your rule, so as they will never pose a legitimate threat to your rule. And of course, the main issue there is de-weaponizing them and or disarming them, what they call disarmament, for all citizens. No. In the kingdom of Chanyilgu, the people of God will be able to bear arms and protect their bodies and themselves and their families. Not get some permission from some government institution, some archangelic institution, which is claiming to protect them. Meanwhile, they won't even allow them a permit to carry something to protect themselves. See, they're claiming to protect you, but they won't allow you to protect you. They say we protect you, but they won't allow anybody to protect you. They say, we're here to protect you. We're here to love you. We love you. We're the loving government. We're the loving archangel that loves you. And we want to serve you. You just can't have any rights. We want to serve you. You just have to pay your taxes, which are enforced stealing. We love you. We appreciate you. Just keep working very hard so we can steal 50% of your money. This is total satanic oppression of human potential. If human beings are so scared to make success and it's more profitable for them to stay on government payroll and or welfare payrolls and be happy with, they want to make you happy with $300 welfare stamps. So you're never happy, so you'll never even see yourself as being able to generate $30,000 a month. How's that? You'll never see yourself being able to create innovative technologies, services, products, etc., that can help and aid people's lives. See, they don't ever want you to imagine that you can make $3,000 a month, $30,000 a month, $300,000 a month. No, because that would be bad. That would be bad for them, because then you would say, I don't want to be a slave anymore, and you would see the lunacy of the welfare state making people happy with $300 a month and making them destroy all their human potential with just $300 a month. They know that human drive and desperation creates the drive for innovation. What is that colloquial phrase? What is that colloquial phrase? Is it desperation is the mother of all invention? When people feel the pressure of reality coming upon them, then they're able to think strategically and or think or partner up with other people that will help them get out of that situation. That is the common human urge for survival. That's what survival is all about. The human species has a tremendous ability to survive. It is the most successful, more than lions, saber-toothed tigers, everything else, mammoths, everything. It is the most successful survival species in the history of the universe. And we overcome when we have to be in a survival situation. We overcome, we thrive. When stresses, environmental stresses are put upon us, not only environmental stresses, but other types of stresses are put upon us, those stresses become activation points. They become stimuluses for us to unlock our genetic potential. Now, if we're not given those stressors, then our genetic potential is not released. And that is why the super elite class in the archangelic system does not want you to have any stressors and be brainwashed by video games all day, playing in the Lapland of Fantasyland and watching dramas if you're a girl all day, wasting your life in a false narcotic, self-induced Fantasyland state where you're in perpetual fake happiness, being a total loser in front of a computer screen and not really going on changing the world, because they don't want you to make progress and they don't want you to make prosperity. They want you to make success and innovation and creativity, etc. They don't want you to do any of that, because then you show them, you can show other human beings that they can do the same too. Oh, and they wouldn't want that because they don't want any challenges to their monopolies and the controlled state economic system, which forces users to buy from their companies that they create and they set up monopolies for. It's just like any communist state. You go to North Korea, they have CVS pharmacies, they have little pharmacies, but the pharmacies are owned by government bureaucrats. And you're forced to buy from that government bureaucrat. Basically, by going to that pharmacy, you're forced to buy from the pharmacy because all other pharmacies are put out of business. Nobody can start up a pharmacy. Do you understand how that works? That is the nature of the archangelic system. To stifle, to stultify, to destroy, to make putrid and pitiful the human potential, because we are made in the image of God. And we have power and dunamis, and we have the Spirit of God dwelling with us, and we have fire in our eyes, and we have the potential to destroy predators and be moral and good and responsible at the same time. They don't want that. No, that would set up an alternative system that other people could see and say, shoot, we should copy that, because that's what's creating happiness and prosperity. They don't want that. Because their slaves may just want it. If they see it, if they know it exists, they may want it. Oh, and if the slaves want it, that would be a problem. Because then the monopolies would have to crack. And then the bureaucracies would have to be destroyed. Oh, there may be revolutions against us. Oh, that is how the tyrants always end up in lose. This happened on microcosm with the family fraud. Now demonstrations are increasing in front of their gates. And at the microcosm too, there's a sovereignty revolution that is spreading over the world, covering this globe, awakening people to the reality of the tyrant's world governance. So Gorsuch will be a tremendous addition to the Supreme Court. Kennedy has been hinting that he will retire within the next couple of months, which will give another Trump pick to the Supreme Court if that happens. And that will effectively destroy federal enforcement of gay marriage. It will destroy the gay marriage ridiculous, oppressive rule that you must support gay marriage. If you're a church, you have to marry gay people, even though it's against you. It's ridiculous. You have to leave that to the states. You have to leave that to the states to decide. You can't allow the federal bureaucracy to federalize that kind of law. It's ridiculous. But that would strike down the gay marriage law. That would help reciprocity laws. Now there's a difference, and I just learned about this recently. There's a difference between a federalized and national concealed carry act per permit, which would not be the ideal, because then the federal government would have control over that, and it could be changed. The better way, of course, is for reciprocity. And of course, I think this is what Kuch John's been talking about, reciprocity. The strengthening of reciprocity laws. And so that when the Supreme Court rules that the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms for all citizens in all states, then the reciprocity laws of each state can be modified and or be brought up to date with the Supreme Court's ruling to allow people to carry, if you're licensed in one state, just like a driver's license, if you're a licensed permit Pennsylvania driver, you can still drive in New York. They still acknowledge that that's reciprocity. But you don't have a federal license permit. You don't have a federal driving permit, right? You don't have a federal permit. You have a state permit, state driver's license, which allows you to drive in other states because they have reciprocity with that state that you're licensed in. See, that would be the same way with the guns or firearms and self-protection tools. That you could have a permit for, just like driving, a permit for carrying your firearm in one state, but it would be reciprocal in all of the states. Very huge news with Gorsuch finally being placed into the Supreme Court, being sworn in on Monday, today. And so that is a great change in American history. Of course, Gorsuch has some stains within his career, supporting torture and those kind of things. But on the whole, in terms of the right to bear arms, in terms of constitutionality, he is better, way better than any pick that Hillary Clinton would have done, way better pick than any Obama pick would have done. So he is definitely a move in the right direction. And if Kennedy resigns and retires in a couple of months, well, then there'll be another pick, and then that will completely solidify America moving back into the sovereignty position. Of course, at that point, and because they see this, the political Satanists and the globalists and the centralists are trying to push for World War III to stop this move, because if this happens in America, this will happen in France, this will happen in UK after the Brexit. Even though they're being threatened by the main European Union head with war now, Tim, the UK being threatened with war for exiting the EU. Of course, Marine Le Pen in 2 weeks will be in the first round of elections in France, probably winning 11 candidates, but she seems to be the clear top leader of those candidates and the first woman president, but also a sovereignty candidate for France is coming, hopefully. Sweden is also, the National Party is also rising as well. Even the Netherlands lost with Geert Wilders this time. It seems that it is proven, is shown that he is now the second most powerful party in the land, and probably the next election cycle may win. So there are great revolutions happening all around the world. The sovereignty candidates are moving forward. But the Satanists and the political Satanists want to stop that. And their main trope, their main apparatus and tool they will use to do that is war. That's why we must not fall in that trap and not fall into the warmongering schemes. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And we are back for our final farewell segment, a short segment today as we now reach the third hour. Tomorrow we'll have our very special guest reporting from Lebanon, Alfred Karam, giving us his breakdown of the Syrian Middle East situation as somebody who lives in the Middle East. And that is an update we will do with the King's Report to connect with our contacts and sanctuarians around the world, wherever especially top news is driving or moving towards that particular week, which will help, of course, increase our perspective with people actually on the ground in those places and parts of the world. Thank you for joining us on the King's Report this Monday, April 10th, 2017. It's going to be a hot, warm day. Tick season is coming about. Get outside, however. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. The news always wants to scare you. We don't want to scare you from being scared of God's creation. Yes, there are those scenarios out there, but there's a lot of other risks in your life. Drink that fresh air. Get outside. Once you realize, I've been in the height of tick season. I've been sitting on the grass all the time. I get ticks. People get ticks, and it's just a normal part of if you go into the wilderness. But it's not a scary thing. If you remove the tick within 24 hours, there's hardly zero possibility of any Lyme disease entering your body and bloodstream. You just got to do a tick check and have your wife scan your naked body. And husbands, that's a great way. Take your wife out hugging. That's a great way to be able to scan her naked body in a healthy way every day. Take them out. Get exercise, get some sunshine, get that vitamin D into your bloodstream. Take your multivitamins, organic hopefully. Eat fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy organic proteins. Get your God stuff in your body. Take care of your body. Train it, work it, make it exercise, give it some healthy stress so you become a stronger individual to stand up against Satanism on all levels. We thank you for joining us again once on this Monday, April 10th, 2017. We'll see you tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp on the King's Report. God bless, Godspeed, and may his kingdom come.
hallelujah.